What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Swaggy Vet Podcast. I'm your host, Big Pen. My co-host can't be with us today, but we got a special guest today. We got a real special guest. He's been a tremendous asset to the U.S. Army and to the United States of America. So I'm going to bring here, we got with us Command Sergeant Major Bogdan Ionescu. What's going on, man?
What's going on?
How's your day?
Happy to be good, man. I'm happy to be here. This is, the fact that we could do this live, like do it in person, I think is kind of, it's an honor to be able to open this up.
Absolutely.
And do it, right? And, I think we talked about, trying to do it, over video or whatever, right? Back in North Carolina, but I'm glad it worked out to where I could come down here. We can do this face to face and just make it happen, man. This is good.
Absolutely. And what people don't know is Ionescu is one of the original Delta dogs too. I know if y'all watch some of the previous videos, we talk about Delta, we talk about Biggie Smalls. So he's been a part of the original crew. So it's really an honor to have you.
Yeah, it's good seeing those guys on the podcast too, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's pretty awesome seeing a lot of those guys. I haven't seen you and actually seen you in probably close to like 20 years.
Yeah.
And a lot of the guys at the reunion, man, it's like, man, it's been like 20 years since we all saw each other. And
that's one good thing about having the reunion is we can link up, see each other, and then it's good you can come on the podcast too, man.
Absolutely.
So let's go ahead and start it off, man. You born in Romania.
Yep.
Moved to Los Angeles very young. How was that?
So I was like 2 years old, right? It was, it's a pretty interesting story, right? So growing up, my parents were, it was, after World War II, whatever. And, it was communist country, right? Like communist dictatorship. So my parents decided like, hey, like, they weren't having this, right? They want to do something better. So they just left. They went on vacation. And they left to Greece and left me in Romania with like my grandparents. I was like,
oh, wow.
I was a newborn. So they left to Greece, got there, requested political asylum, right? The U.S. accepted them or whatever. So they ended up in Cali because we had family there. And then eventually a couple years later, they brought me over when I was like 2 years old or something to L.A. I think I came over like undocumented, right? Like I had no papers. Wow. And then like the lady that brought me left and they just left me there and kind of had to figure it out, right? So yeah, man, it was really interesting growing up in like, immigrant family. Parents didn't really speak English, right? Living in LA, right? Predominantly like Hispanic, like immigrant neighborhood, man. So it was pretty wild.
How was your English when you first got there?
Like I said, I was 2, right? So yeah. I grew up speaking English and Romanian.
Okay,
right?
gotcha.
So it was, I don't really have, people say I have an accent, but I don't know if I have an accent. I don't think so.
No, I just think, but you've been away from Cali for a long time, so you kind of probably lost that accent a little bit, yeah?
Since 98.
Especially being in the military, being around, military is really a melting pot.
For sure.
So I know I used to be a lot more Southern a little bit because I'm from Florida.
Yeah.
But being around, like, people with different accents, you kind of lose it a little bit.
Yeah, or you start picking up weird accents, right? I've been in North Carolina. I've been in North Carolina since '98, right?
Yeah.
I did a stint down in Tampa for a while, but that isn't, So since '98, and I'm always like worried, like, man, like, do I sound like I'm from North Carolina? It's funny when I first moved to North Carolina, and I was like talking to people from North Carolina, like I didn't understand what they were saying. I was like, you're not even speaking English right now, right? Like I can't. Like you need to slow down, right? And so I don't know if I picked up a little bit of that North Carolina twang over the last 20 plus years.
So you've been in a lot of various roles, from private to sergeant major. What are some key points you learned, about being a leadership coming up? You've had different types of styles of leadership, especially being the 82nd, and then going on and then going to the CA community. So what are some key points you learned during all them various roles?
Yeah, so we could probably do a whole hour and a half podcast just on leadership, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Like I still go down to the Enlist Academy down at SOCOM, and I'll sit down with the students for like an hour and a half, and we'll talk. So we'll specifically talk nothing but leadership, right? Like the role of like that senior NCO, right? Like that command sergeant major, and like how that role works with the with your commander, really like at the 05 level and then up to the 06 level, right? So we can do that. We can talk a lot about that, but I think the biggest things for me in terms of leadership, right? Aside from like all the different styles and all the different approaches, what what I've kind of realized through my career is that even as you start moving up the ranks, right, you can never stop developing yourself as a leader, right? Like you might be a sergeant major, you might be a general officer. You still got to work on honing those skills and becoming a better leader, right? I mean, I grew up. I don't know if you grew up playing. Did you grow up playing sports in high school at all?
Oh yeah, I was a big football guy.
Football.
Yeah.
So I grew up playing basketball. Right, play basketball in high school. Played a little bit of basketball, a little bit of college ball before I joined the Army. Nothing major. And so I kind of related to that, right? Like when you're in high school and you're trying to get to the college level, like how do you get better?
Yeah.
Right. Like you practice, right? So you're out there shooting free throws when there's nobody else in the gym, right? You're shooting 100 free throws, or you're just getting better. And then you get to college, right? You don't stop practicing. You keep practicing. And then if you make it to the pros, like you think like Kobe Bryant or LeBron James, like stop shooting free throws or they stop practicing. If anything, they're practicing even harder because the competition is so much better, and then the stakes are even higher, right? So I kind of apply the same concept to leadership. Like the higher up you go, you have to continue developing yourself. You gotta you gotta read. You gotta watch podcasts, right? They got I think it's called From the Green Notebook, or the Green Notebook is a pretty good podcast where they get senior leaders and they talk about leadership. So you constantly have to hone your leadership and get better and better and better, whether it's through like institutional leadership training or whether it's on your own, right? Like you have to, right? Because the higher up you go, you just got more and more. You got thousands of people that are relying on you, on your leadership, your decisions, stuff like that, right? So I think that's one key point is you never stop developing yourself as a leader, right? Just like you never stop doing PT. Just you got a 600 on the ACFT. It doesn't mean you just stop, right? If anything, you gotta keep doing more, right? So I think that's one thing that's important. I think really the second thing, which is why I do, what I do when I go down to the academy and I talk to students, is that one of the most important thing that a leader does is develop other leaders, right? That's like the number one thing, right? You could be the best leader, but if you're not developing, those subordinate leaders, the leaders below you to become better leaders, then what are you really doing, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's important that you continue honing your skills, you continue being better, like kind of evolving your leadership style, your leadership approach, and then just developing other leaders. And I made that was very important to me as a brigade CSM, battalion CSM especially, was making sure that I'm down there, I'm talking to first sergeants, I'm talking to team sergeants, and we're talking about leadership, right? We're not talking about, like tactics and, stuff like that, right? Like we're really talking about how to lead soldiers, how to take care of people, how to advise commanders, different things like that, right? So it's important, right? Because it never stops.
No, it doesn't.
It never stops.
Have you had leadership where you're like, you know what, this is definitely how I'm not going to be when I'm in a leadership position?
Yeah, absolutely. I think most of the lessons that you learn coming up are exactly those lessons, like you said, right? It's really like you watch, you're like, hey, you know what? I don't like the way that particular leader is leading. I don't like their style, I don't like the way they're doing it, and I'm not going to do that when I'm in that position, right? The catch is when you get to that position, you get to that role, you got to not be like that leader, whether you're counterproductive or the Army used to call it toxic leadership or whatever. You got to not be that, right? So you constantly got to check yourself. You constantly got to look yourself in the mirror and say, okay, hey, all those lessons that I've learned, all those the things that I would never do, am I doing them or I'm not doing them, right? And then you got to reach out to your peers and you got to constantly get that feedback to make sure that But a lot of lessons I learned, 100%, were like, man. I mean, I had some leaders in 82nd where I was like, man, they got the job done for sure. But I look back and I'm like, man, they just smoked us for no reason, and it could have been probably a better way to kind of approach that. And I remember telling myself, like, I'm not going to be like that, right? I'm not going to get angry. I'm not going to, I'm not going to get crazy, right? Because people are not receptive to that kind of leadership.
Yeah, I've had a lot of leaders up in your face, yelling, hey, this is how it's done in this. But I think when you start doing that to, a lower enlisted, they just go, okay, in one ear and out the other. Yeah. They stop listening and they stop being receptive.
For sure.
Especially nowadays, I see in the military the way the trajectory has gone with the leadership and with the style of the Army now. It's definitely not when we came up.
For sure. Yeah. Different time, different generation,
yeah.
right? You can blame it on, just generational differences or whatever. The thing, so, and the Army gets that, right? The Army understands it. The Army is investing a lot of money and a lot of time in identifying those traits, those counterproductive traits, right? They've got assessment programs for battalion commanders, for brigade commanders. They've got assessment programs for brigade commanders. And it's like a holistic view of that leader before they put them into that position. You go TDY, you go through a full assessment. They make you take an ACFT, right? You sit down with it's like double blind panel, and they try to like identify those traits early, so that way you're not in position, and now you're getting relieved because of your climate sucks or like whatever, right? So the Army's come a long way in terms of how it like really tries to they're not just looking at your paper like, hey, your NCOERs are good, your OERs are good. That's great. We're going to make you a commander. We're going to make you a command sergeant major. They're looking at identifying those things, right? And so, I think we, it's written down somewhere, right, that like all soldiers are entitled to outstanding leadership, right? And so like the Army is like they absolutely are, and they take it very seriously, right? So they've come a long way.
So you've been over the years, you've done a lot of different roles. And now you're at the, peak of enlisted. You're Command Sergeant Major. So coming up, and I know you got some young kids. How do you balance all that, especially being in the role that you were? Because you guys in the CA community, especially 95th, are a big high op tempo community. So how do you balance that with family?
Yeah. So coming up through, once you hit like that command level, right, as a commander or a CSM, right, you start going through like all these pre-command courses, right? You start doing all this stuff, right? And so, when I started going through all those, like I heard the same thing. I heard, like you have like general officers or, their enlisted counterparts, the CSMs, talking about, hey, make sure you maintain balance, make sure you have, work-life balance and all that. And I'm sitting there looking at these guys and I'm like, I know you didn't get to where you're at by maintaining balance, right?
Yeah.
Regardless of the profession, right? If whether you want to be like the best doctor, the best, basketball, football player, the best whatever, like balance isn't, to me, it's not about balance, because balance kind of implies equality, right? So you're trying to maintain this balance between work and life. And I heard this many years ago that it's not really about trying to maintain balance. It's more about how do you manage the imbalance between the two, right? Because there's going to be days or weeks where the Army's getting theirs, right? You're deployed, you're TDY, it's 0-2, you're on the drop zone, whatever it is. And so it's more about investments, right? It's about, hey, deposits and withdrawals, right? So so if you're constantly investing and you're constantly letting the Army get theirs, and you're not taking the opportunity to sit there and say, okay, hey, maybe today, maybe this weekend, maybe this week, I need to make investments in my family, then the reality is you're never going to balance the two. It just doesn't work like that, right? So you have to be like very conscious, especially the higher up you go, on being able to decide, okay, yeah, I could be part of this, whatever this event is, for the unit, but there's risk there, right? Because it ends up, the family ends up suffering, right? So for me, I was very, very strict with like just my daily battle rhythm, right? Like I'd get up at 3:30 in the morning for years, right? Because I got to be out of the house by 4 because I live an hour away. Be in the office by 5, so I could sit there, clean out all my emails, stare at spreadsheets, do whatever I do, in order for me to be able to leave my office by 1700, so I can be home and spend time with my family, right?
Yeah.
And so I sacrificed on the front side by waking up at 3:30, right, which kind of sucks, doing it for so long, but I'm able to come home, right? And I had a hard rule. It's like, hey, unless there's a crisis or some kind of emergency going on, you're not going to find me in the office past 1700. There's got to be something happening that's gonna take me away from that, right? So again, it's about managing that imbalance and understanding, okay, hey, am I spending a little bit too much time, on the work side and not as much time on the family side. So how you manage the imbalance that comes with it, I think is important.
So that's good. You kind of front load your work in the beginning, then you go about your day, and then, hey, it's family time. So you come to work, you're going through your emails, like you said, spreadsheets. Do you think that's a little bit better because you're nice and fresh and you kind of understand it better. Instead of going through your day, you're kind of weary at the end and then trying to look at that stuff later.
Sure. Yeah. And not only that, but it's never ending, right?
Yeah.
It's never ending. So
shout out the sponsor of this video, OGC Custom Stained Glass. Now, OGC is a company that creates the dopest pieces of stained glass art while preserving culture, tradition, and heritage for their customers. Whether contemporary or traditional, every piece is a custom design from hand-cut stained glass, adding a classic accent to any window and making an awesome gift for any occasion. So go check them out. Link will be in the description.
So if you the reason I did it, not just so I can be out of the office at 1700 and go spend time with my family, but really the reason I did it is because it's never ending. I mean, your inbox, I have hundreds of emails in it, right?
Yeah.
I leave at 1700, I come back the next morning and there's like 50 emails in my inbox, right? And so for me, it was important that throughout the day from 09 till 1700, that I was not sitting behind a computer or tied to the computer, like digging through emails or staring at, again, right? Like, especially for first sergeants, right? I mean, you're staring at trackers and spreadsheets and you're doing all this stuff because you're managing all the readiness and all the training of that company. That you're not stuck, you're not tied to that. So if somebody comes in your office and they're like, hey, you got a second? You can't be like, oh, well, come back later because I'm staring at emails, right? So that was a no-go for me. I was always like, hey, like, you got to be available, you got to be present, people got to be able to come. If you're going to say you got an open door policy, well, if that door is open, people walk in, you can't tell them to come back later because you're staring at emails, right? So for me, I made sure that I got all that admin stuff and all that very time-consuming stuff, like just kind of out of the way to free myself up, right? And I had heard people say like, oh man, I can't get any work done because people keep coming into my office. And I'm like, well, people coming into your office to talk to you, that is your work, right? That's what leaders do, right? Like those interactions, like talking to your people, talking to soldiers, that's the real work. Emails and all that stuff, man, that just comes with the territory, So I was very deliberate about how I kind of managed my day, and did stuff, right?
Man, that's good. Deliberate. I like that. So out of all you've learned and coming up, what do you think you want to instill in your sons as, I know, because how old are they?
So they just turned 6 and 4 in May.
Yeah.
So they're young. They're little boys, right? So I mean that being there, number one, I think is important for me just because I didn't have a very good relationship with my dad, right? Like through high school, and then after I joined the Army, it was just like we barely even talked, right? So I think being present and being there is important, right? Which one of the decisions that I think like the decision or the factor that drove me to retire at this point in my career, right, is just because that they're at that age, and so I think in terms of instilling in them, right. I think the three things that are big to me that I've just kind of like lived my life and lived my career around, like kind of the bedrock is really it's loyalty, commitment, and then discipline.
Okay.
Right. Like those are the big things, right? You gotta have like loyalty to whether it's like your people, the organization, your family, whatever it is, or you gotta have that loyalty, and obviously like with that loyalty that it comes the commitment. Like you're gonna do things that you may not necessarily like want to do in that moment, but you're committed to them. And again, not just to family, right? To your people, to the organization, and then discipline, man. That's like that's a big thing for me. It's kind of the foundation of everything, right? I mean, waking up at 3:30 in the morning, there's very little motivation when you're waking up at 3:30 in the morning, right? You might get a little motivated when you have that first cup of coffee, and then later on throughout the day that motivation is going to kind of drop, right? But at the end of the day, the thing that kind of keeps us going and makes us do the things that we have to do is discipline, right?
Oh,
and
absolutely.
so I think for instilling in them like that discipline that, hey, sometimes like, yeah, you may not be motivated, you may not want to do certain things, but the discipline is going to get you through it, right? Like when you're tired, when you're just like, man, like you've had enough of it, that okay, you've got that foundation of discipline, you're committed, and you're going to get after it, right, regardless of what it is, right? So I think those three things are big to me, and that doesn't just apply to the military. That's regardless of what you do, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Whether you own your own business or whether you're doing whatever, right? I think that discipline and that commitment, definitely just kind of gives you gives you that drive, right, and allows you to just to get through your day, right, and to be productive.
Do they like any sports?
So they're doing like it's like this ninja thing, right? It's it's
like the ninja competition thing.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So they do that, right, where they got all the obstacles.
Yeah.
Whatever.
That's cool.
So they just did their first. So my Alex, my 6-year-old. I mean, he's a beast. I mean, this kid's doing. He'll drop and do 10 push-ups at 6 years old, and he'll show off, right? He's starting to do pull-ups now, not because I told him to. It's just he's just starting to do it, right? So he loves it. Every time we go to the park, he's not like really playing on the slides or whatever. He's like climbing on the outside of the thing. He's trying to like hang off stuff, and I'm like, all right. So we signed him up for a Spartan race right outside of Asheville last weekend.
Wow.
Took him out there. And both him and Adrian, who's 4, I mean, they ran the Spartan race, right? They ran it. I mean, Alex took off. Like, he was gone, right? I couldn't even keep up with him, right? They're doing like the cargo nets. They're going over the walls. I mean, they smoked themselves, right? Because at that age, they're not pacing themselves, right?
No.
They just took off, right?
Their balls to the wall.
And it was hot, right? They got their little medals, right? And they loved it, right? They loved it. So they're into that. Organized sports, not probably, I think they were doing a little bit of soccer in at school. But not. I think we'll look at getting them into some stuff this coming up year.
Okay.
But yeah, then they love it. I mean, they'll climb all over everything. It's pretty wild.
So, in your opinion, what are the biggest thing veterans and challenges they face today? And how can we as a community help support them, facilitate veterans?
Yeah, and that's an interesting question. So, we hear like all the stuff with the VA is obviously in the media. It's in the news, right? Especially now because they got some budget issues, on the VA side, right? So, I mean, I think the thing with transitioning out of the military, or really transitioning out of any profession that you've been doing for 20 plus years is for that period of time you've built a sense of purpose, a sense of identity, and then a sense of community, right? So you have all that. So then when you transition, there's a lot of risk there of losing that, right? You lose your purpose, maybe you lose your identity because you're not a soldier anymore, you're not a NCO, you're not whatever it is, and then of course like the community, like you lose that, right? Because you're not part of the team, you're not part of the company, you're not part of the whatever, right? So I think for me, in terms of like, I guess to your question about like what can like the community at large do to better support veterans? I mean, I think really like those institutions and those resources, like they already exist, right? They're already in the community, right? It's just a matter of that outreach and getting veterans to be a part of it, right? And I was guilty of it for years, right? Because anytime I thought of like the American Legion or the VFW, I'm thinking a bunch of old guys sitting around the bar and just telling war stories, right? And so that mentality I think needs to change, right? Because I mean, you have a lot of veterans organizations out there that provide that community, they provide that it allows us to maintain that identity, right? So I think for me, like I joined the Fuquay Arena chapter of American Legion a couple years ago.
Okay.
And I haven't been able to be as involved as I would like to be because I had a full-time job and now I'm kind of going through through transition. But I think like I think that's our community, right? Like that already exists, right? Not saying that the community at large can't support us, but it's like, man, you can only say, hey, thank you for your service so many times when I'm in line at Walmart. Like, that's good. I appreciate it. But like, it's like, you don't know, like not saying like, hey, like we want to be a part of a community where we kind of like share some of the same things, right? Like been there, done that, right? Like we all raised our right hand at one point, right? To, protect and defend the Constitution. And so having that connection, I think is important. And when you lose that, when you transition, there's a lot of risk, right? I mean, and it can definitely be, very, very, very catastrophic to a lot of folks who lose that, those things that they've had for so many years, right? So I think, getting involved in those kinds of organizations and having those organizations, I would love to be able to go to the American Legion, to the VFW, and see like young guys.
Oh, absolutely.
Right?
Yep.
Like guys that are, maybe are still in uniform, that have just recently retired and are like, now they're like, running their own business or whatever, not just what again the misconception that it's just a bunch of old guys sitting around, back from Vietnam and Korean War like that. I think if we expand that community and veterans, right, like you and I, whatever, like veterans from this generation get involved in that, I think it already exists, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. We just kind of need to take advantage of that stuff that's already out there, right, and really invest in some of that stuff, right?
I will say this. All the veterans I come in contact with, whether it's like, for instance, me and John went down to Bike Week, and they saw like our veteran stuff, and we got so much love. Everybody supports veterans. Even a lot of veterans that were there, we just stop and we just talk, have a conversation, and I love that. I love talking to veterans. Tell me your story.
Absolutely.
What's going on. So I think it gives that good sense of camaraderie. And it's good for the mental, I really think.
For sure.
Because when I first got out, man, I was like, what am I going to do? You get that euphoric feeling when you get out, man, I'm out. And then you're like, well, what am I going to do now? But I know you got like a solid plan. You're going into something that you've been doing already. So that's really good.
Yeah.
That's going to be good for your transition, your mental also. So based on your experiences with all the programs, how do you think we could help veterans transition to civilian life? I know we kind of touched on it a little bit, but
Sure.
I know when you're doing they're still doing the SFLS TAP, the Soldier for Life?
Yep.
So do you think they could maybe do something better with that or have different programs maybe?
So, it's interesting you bring that up, right? So, I went through SFL TAP early.
Okay.
Right? They still do it, and a lot of people have talked negatively about SFL TAP, right? And it is what it is, right? It's not a perfect program, right? And so I think you've got just TAP in general, right? VA's got transition assistance program. On the soft side, I mean, we've got countless of programs, right? We got the Honor Foundation. Special Operators Transition Foundation. I went through the Donovan and Bank Foundation. They have a 2-day transition seminar that kind of brings all those resources together, and it outlines them along like a timeline. It says, hey, if you're this far out, you need to look at this. If you're kind of getting closer, you're about 6 months to a year out from transitioning. There's some different stuff. So we're very fortunate on the soft side that we have those resources available, but those resources exist on the regular side too, for regardless of service, regardless of whatever, right? Like I said, you can just Google, veterans transition programs, right?
Yeah.
And you'll get countless hits, right? Military One Source has it. You can go on the VA website. DoD has the Skill Bridge program, right? Which allows you, to transition into some different professions or whatever. I think that the problem that I've seen is that regardless of how perfect or imperfect those programs are, it's what I've seen through my career, especially in the last several years, as I really get a nice a top down view at guys and gals that are transitioning, is that like we wait too long, right?
Yeah.
Like we wait. I taught, it's like, oh, your transition, how far are you? Oh, I'm a year out. I'm like, a year? Like, and you're just now starting TAP?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're a year out, you subtract your terminal leave, your permissive TDY, if you're going to do an internship or whatever. So you're like 6 months out, right?
Mm-hmm.
6 to 9 months out. And so, I kind of, a good analogy is like JMPI, right? For like jump masters, right?
Yeah.
And so like the actual like sequence and the act of doing JMPI is not very complicated, right? I mean, you can take anybody and say, okay, hey, you're gonna check this to make sure that's not weird, and you're gonna check the chin strap, make sure. You can walk anybody through it. When it gets hard is when I say, okay, you're gonna JMPI 3 jumpers, 2 combat equipment, and you got 5 minutes. Now it becomes extremely difficult because you've shortened the timeline. Yeah. And so when you reduce the amount of time that you give yourself to complete any task, you're going to make mistakes, you're going to miss stuff, and you don't have time to go back and reflect on what you're doing in order to be successful, right? So I think my message, I guess, to anybody transitioning would be like start early, right? Before I came out of before I came out of position as the brigade CSM, we hired a transition assistance coordinator, and him and I were talking, and he's like, hey, like these kids that are like 6 months out or whatever, like there's not a whole lot I can do for them, right? I mean, I'm gonna do what I can. Obviously, try to crash on that particular problem, give them the resources that they need. But really, he's trying to target the guys that are like 2 years out, 2 years plus out, right? Because there's a lot, right? You got TAP. Right, you got to figure out, okay, what are you going to do when you get out? Are you gonna go get a job? Are you gonna go back to school? Are you gonna start your own business? And then you layer all the VA stuff on top of it, right? Because if you're like me, for most of us that came up during like the GWAT era, like we've spent the last 20 years just kind of like ignoring, whatever problems we had, whether it was like physical, behavioral health, whatever it is. We've just been ignoring because we've been getting after it, right? We didn't want like whatever it was that we told a doc to keep us from going on a deployment. Yeah. And so now you've given yourself essentially less than a year to put all that together, see the providers, get all the stuff squared away on top of trying to figure out what you're going to do afterwards. So it's self-imposed pain that we cause ourselves when we don't give ourselves enough time. The resources are there, but when you don't have a lot of time, there's no way that you can tap into the resources, right? So I started TAP like the month that I took over as the brigade CSM, right? Wow. Because I already knew, hey, 3 years down the line, 2.5, 3 years down the line, like I had already made the decision that I was going to retire. And I knew if I waited until I came out of position in June of this year, I would be 6-7 months out, and that's not enough time, right? Yeah. So I started early, making sure I was checking in with my boss, and I'm like, hey, is my transition stuff like affecting, my professional responsibilities? And he's like, man, I didn't even know you were transitioning. I was like, all right, cool. Like that's the answer I wanted to hear, right? Because I had so much time that I was able to kind of pick away at it, and then learn from my mistakes, and then go back. And I had time to go back and redo things. Like I blew off the seminars that they offer on like entrepreneurship, right? Because at that time, 2+ years ago, we were talking about, maybe I'd be cool to start a business, but we weren't serious, right? So I kind of blew all that stuff off. And then when we really started getting heavy on, hey, we're gonna do this, right? We're gonna start our own company. Then I'm like, oh wait, like there's a seminar. They have like resources, right? Not just SFL TAP, but then there's other agencies, the state of North Carolina. They have a lot of resources and a lot of seminars for people starting their own business. And I had started so far out that I had time to go back and to take the, be a part of those seminars, get smart on like the business management side of the house, not the actual like practical, like, what it is that we do. And I'm still doing it. Just this week, right? I dialed in on a webinar that the state runs on, how to manage your, sales taxes and all this stuff, right? Because, a lot goes into running a business, right? Yeah. If I would have waited until I came out of the seat to do that, and I would have only had 6-7 months to do all that, like it would have been like, okay, hey, you're JMPI in 3 jumpers, you got 3 minutes, right? Dang, yeah, right. So I would say, my advice would be like, man, start early, right? Once you've made the decision, just start early.
So somebody that wasn't, and I wouldn't say you're bound by your command, but somebody that doesn't really have to be in that position. What's a good time? 2 years out, maybe?
Yeah, 2 years. So you can start TAP like the Army will allow you to start TAP 2 years out. Okay. Right? You just go on a little website and say, hey, I'm retiring, 2 years from now. And then they'll set you up with your appointments, right? So I took over. I got in the seat in June of 22. By October of 22, I was done with TAP. Okay. Capstone done. Everything was done, right? And so then I had the rest of the time to kind of figure it out. So 2 years out gives you the ability. Like the biggest thing I would say TAP did for me was it generated a lot of questions, right? Because it's not a perfect program, right? The folks that are briefing are, they're just, it's the same brief every time they give it, right? Yeah. And you're going to have questions that they may not have answers to. The biggest thing it did for me is I went through the program super quick. It generated a lot of questions, and then I had time to research those questions and to really dig into, okay, hey, how does this work? How does that, like, really understand the VA side of the house, right? So, yeah, I would say 2 years out, but you can start a lot of that stuff even more than 2 years out. Some of those foundations, right? You can start, 2.5 years out, you can get after it pretty early, right? For some reason, people don't. They're like, oh, but you're out.
Hey, thanks for tuning in. If you love our content, and we hope you do, don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. Hit that notification bell so you never miss another video. Let's go.
Let me do SFL tap. I'm like, bro, like you're behind the power curve.
Now, these seminars, are they exclusively to one area, or do they kind of have them all over? Because I didn't even know there were seminars. I would have went to them.
Yeah, so every state, so through the NC Department of Revenue, and then they partner up with there's like some, I think there's like a couple colleges. I don't know if it's community colleges, whatever. And I can't remember the name of it, but North Carolina has they have a program or an organization that is like specifically tailored to like helping like small business, like startups, right? And kind of like why, and it's all free, right?
Mm-hmm.
You just have to have the time to tap into it, right? So like I'm on their distro list, and like every other day they'll be like, oh, we're doing a seminar on this, right? Like they had a seminar a couple weeks ago that was like social media for small business. Mm-hmm. And I was like, cool, I'm already doing it. I'm already doing Instagram. I'm doing, Facebook, doing LinkedIn and all that. And so I was like, all right, maybe I'll learn something. And so, took the you just register for it. It's a Zoom call, and you're not talking to anybody. You're just sitting there. You're in receive mode, and they share some things that even though 80% of the stuff you may already know, right? If you've been kind of standing up a business, you started a business, but you're always going to pick up like nuggets, right? You're always going to pick up little things, especially some of the more complicated ones in terms of how state taxes work and all this different stuff. So every state, I think if you go to that state's Department of Revenue website, they're going to have those resources for small businesses, right? Especially if you're like super small, like 2 people,
Yeah.
right? You don't have like a whole staff that that's what they do, right? You're doing your own taxes, right? I mean, you can hire an accountant, you can do whatever. You're probably doing your own social media, right? And then they'll do the webinar, and then they'll have resources of like, hey, if you want to learn more about this, right, you can reach out to these folks or whatever. And there's a lot of companies out there that partner with them that do it pro bono, right? They're literally there to help you get your business off the ground and manage it, right? And so that's all great stuff. But if you don't have time, or you've not allowed yourself enough time to take advantage of those resources, then you're constantly trying to play catch up, right?
Yeah.
And it becomes very stressful, right? And then then you blame SFL tap, right? And then you're blaming your first sergeant because he didn't give you enough time to go to your appointments, right? It's just like that happens. I'm not saying that doesn't happen, but you got to buy that time. Like time is the most important thing through the transition process.
100%. So looking back in your career, what you've done, multiple deployments, you've been in various leadership roles. What kind of was most impactful during that time? It doesn't have to be one specific time. Like what helped you get to where you're at now?
So I think most impactful I would say is, so when I joined like a lot of us do, right? I'm gonna do 4 years, I'm gonna get out, right?
Yeah.
That was my whole thing, right? I'm gonna do 4 years, I'm gonna get out, I'm gonna go back to LA, go back to college. I was starting my junior year of college when I joined the Army.
Wow.
And so I was like, okay, hey, I'm gonna go do something else. I'm gonna do 4 years, right? And so like I'll never forget it, right? Not just like the moment, but just that entire day, right? So at the time, I think you were in the company at the time. I was the company operations sergeant, the training NCO, right?
Yeah,
my office was,
that.
you walk up the stairs and it's the first office on the left. So I'm an E5, I got my own office and I'm managing airborne operations, ranges, right? FTXs, like you name it. And so, that day we had it was PLDC back in the day.
Yeah.
It's BLC now. We had a PLDC class start. And of course, DECO, we owned all the trucks, right? And so battalion is like hitting us up. So I just kind of took it on my own and say, hey, I'm not just going to take like DECO, kids to PLDC. We're going to take the whole battalion, right? And we don't need, we got tired of like, the day before getting a tasking saying, hey, you got to give up 4 trucks for battalion to take the PLDC kid. It's like, hey, we already know how many students we're taking. So we took them down to PLDC. Waited till the last kid in process, right? Made height and weight, everything's good. They weren't missing a canteen. Nobody got kicked out for not having their packing list straight, right? Remember all those shenanigans, right? So I come back to the company. I'm tired because I've been up since like 2 a.m. I come back to the company, I go upstairs, and everybody's hanging around, in the conference room with, first sergeants there, everybody from headquarters up there, and they're watching TV. And of course, I'm a smart ass. I've always been a smart ass. And I'm just like, oh, okay, you guys are sitting here watching TV while, I've been up, since, 2 o'clock in the morning doing big things for the Army, right? And the first sergeant looks at me and he's like, Ionescu, shut up. And they all look back at the TV. And I'm like, so I look at the TV and we saw the second plane hit.
Oh.
Right? And I was like, I was about 6 months out from getting out of the Army at that point, right? With terminal leave and everything, I would have been out in like March or something like that, and this was September. So that was September 11th. On September 13th, I re-enlisted.
Oh, wow.
Right. I tried to do it on the 12th. I tried to do it on the 11th or the 12th, right? But of course, nobody can get on post, right? They had lockdown post. It was like crazy.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. So September 13th, I re-enlisted, and I just remember I'm like, hey, there's no way I'm going to go back to LA and watch this play out like from the couch. That just wasn't right. And it goes back to that loyalty, to that commitment that we kind of talked about earlier. It's like I was absolutely like loyal and committed to the unit, to the people, right? To the, to the 82nd, right? Because, everyone gets indoctrinated when they go to the 82nd, right?
Oh, absolutely. Oh my God.
Paratroopers are, God's gift to, to the
Army.
To the Army or to the country. So, and that's not wrong, right? It's absolutely true, right? Paratroopers are. So I just remember, so I re-enlisted and I was like, all right, hey, look, like something's going to go down. We don't know what, but something's going to go down, right? I don't think anybody knew that 20 years later it would still be going down. And so that was a defining moment for me because that's when my mentality went from, hey, I'm only doing 4 years to like, all right, like I'm committed to the profession now.
Oh, absolutely.
Not necessarily to whatever OIF, OEF, right? Because we were so young back then, but we're definitely committed to each other. I'm not trying to leave at this point in the game, right? And so that was like a defining moment that I think just kind of just, and then the rest is what it is, right?
I had literally just got to the company. I got to the company August 3rd, 2001. Yeah. So I was like fresh off the boat. Yeah. And I remember Sergeant Mortimer is the one who in-processed me. He had just got promoted to E5 the day I got there. Yeah. So he in-processed me. And it's funny because fast forward to 2015, he was our truck master in Italy. Yeah. Yeah.
It's crazy. Small world.
Small world, man.
Small world.
And then he remembered me because we had went to, because September 11th happened, then, Sergeant Watson, we call him Dub. I can't remember his name off top now. Yeah. I just had a brain fart. Sergeant Wazak. Yeah, Sergeant Wazak was our platoon sergeant, and we went to NTC right at the beginning of October, and then, after that, man, everything, we just started deploying like crazy. Yeah. Like, we would get fenced in, and that's why I stayed in the 82nd for 11 years. Absolutely.
Yeah, and people weren't, people weren't leaving. They were just, and then, time just flew by so fast after that, right?
Going back and forth,
one thing or another. And then, everyone, we got back and we did 2 back-to-back. I mean, at least I did because the unit, I think first platoon deployed, I was in BNOC, right? So they removed me as a squad leader because they were deploying and they're like, man, this dude's in BNOC. So I had to weasel my way into that deployment with the battalion. So first platoon, was up with, during the invasion and we ended up pushing our way up also. And then we got redeployed. And then within a couple months of redeploying, like I'm on staff duty and the battalion commander, who was the brigade DCO at the time, who I was with the first time, he comes down, he's like, hey, we're going back to Iraq. I need you to go on ADVON because you've already been to Kuwait, the port, like you've already done all like marshaling all the equipment. And so he's like, hey, we're going back. And I'm like, when are we going back? He's like, 2 months. And I was like, so we hadn't even been on the ground for 2 months. And we were already told, hey, like the whole battalion is going back, right? And that's when we went to TQ, to where the lake was at, right? And then things just started, it just happened so fast, right? And then I got popped for recruiting. I went and I did recruiting. And I was like, man, I just can't, I got to go do something else,
Yeah. What advice would you give to young soldiers just joining right now?
Yeah, so I again, like reflecting back, I think on my experience, right? So that first 4 years, right? So I spent my first, 3.5, almost 4 years in the Army just thinking about getting out of the Army, right? And so, luckily, right, our first sergeant at the time, First Sergeant John D. Burney, I don't know if you remember if he was the first sergeant. He was, man, like I learned so much from that guy. Like luckily I had good leadership that sat me down and was like, hey, look, I got it. You've been talking about getting in the Army for like 2 years. Like, yes, okay, I got it. You're going to get out of the Army. He's like, but things, this was before 9/11. This was like a year before, right? Before I had, that happened and I ended up re-enlisting. But so he sat me down and he was like, hey, look, like don't waste the time while you're here, right? Because things change. We all joined the Army to only do 4 years. And clearly a lot of us do more than 4 years. So he said, don't waste your time. Make sure you preserve options and you create options for the backside, right? And I was like, well, I don't even know what that means, right? I'm like a young E5, right? I'm more worried about, how many chutes can I fill on the next jump? I'm not thinking about creating and preserving options, right? Like thinking strategically. So he sat me down and he's like, hey, look, he's like, you got, you max out your, if you were to go to the E6 promotion board, you would, you're maxed out on awards, you're maxed out on PT, your weapons call is good, civilian ed is good. He's like, you don't have any correspondence, right? So, back then, you have to do all these correspondence courses to get promoted, right? He's like, you don't have any of that. So if you went to the E6 promotion board, like you're not going to get promoted, right? So if you waste the next year not doing anything, and then you decide for whatever reason to re-enlist, you go to the board, you're going to be a year behind, a year and a half behind, and then you're going to waste the whole next year trying to play catch up, right? So he's like, you're here anyway, like take advantage of the time, like get your stuff knocked out so that way if you do decide to re-enlist, then you can. Because he's like, hey, bro, like cutoff for E6 for an 8.8 mic is 798. He's like, there's nobody getting promoted, right? So you got to work. So I was like, all right, cool. So I took his advice. I didn't waste that time. I knocked out all the correspondence. Man, I was like counting promotion points like down to the point, right? And then I ended up re-enlisting, right? A couple months later, I went to the staff sergeant, to the promotion board, and for like about a year, cutoff for 8.8 mic was 798, right? I had 800 points.
Nice. Yeah, because you already came in with civilian ed.
So I had college, and I had taken a little bit more college. So during that year, during like a year time frame, I remember I was the only 8.8 mic in the Army that got promoted to E6.
Holy crap!
Because I had 800 points. Cut off with 798, and every, and so I guess my advice to soldiers just coming in is understand that the Army is you have to treat it like a profession. It's a profession, right? It's the profession of arms, right? And so, right, aside from like mastering the basics, right? Just master those skill level 1 tasks that all soldiers are supposed to know. Then focus on like your MOS specific tasks, right? Be a master at that, but treat the Army like a profession, and do all those things that would make you successful in a profession, and commit to it, right? Like commit to the and I don't mean that an E1 needs to commit to doing 20 years in the Army. Right, you're gonna have those kinds of kids that come in. They're like, I want to be the next sergeant major of the Army. It's like, all right, cool, right? But a lot of us come in and we only think we're going to do 4 years. So like during that 4 years, commit to the profession. Be a professional soldier. And then if you decide to change professions, like it's okay. People change professions all the time, right? But take advantage of everything that's there, right? Set yourself up for success, create options, and then preserve those options so that way if things change and you do decide that you want to stay in, you haven't wasted the last 3-4 years of your career thinking that you're going to get out, right? Because I mean, correspondence courses are free. College is free, right? They give you tuition assistance, right? You might as well take advantage of that. So that was a huge lesson for me because I'm like, man, if I hadn't have done that, all right, so I made E6 in 4. Or E6 in 4 years, right?
That's good.
Only E6 and like I said, the whole Army for that whole year. I wouldn't have done that if I didn't have the right leadership sit there and say, hey man, like don't waste your time while you're here, right? Like it's a profession, right? Commit to the profession. If you want to change, if you want to get out later and go do whatever. It's all good. So that's what I would say to these guys. I've seen too many kids. Right? We had a kid, in the brigade. Who like they were the battalion CSM was scrambling, everybody's scrambling because he was about the RCP as an E5.
Holy crap.
And I was like, what do you mean? Like, I'm like, how long has this kid been in the Army? And then I look at his records, and he got to the unit in 2009, the same time I got to the unit as an E7. So he got to the unit as a private, 2009. So this was like 2022 or whatever. So however many years later, this kid's an E5, and I'm the brigade CSM, right? And I'm like, what have you been doing for all these years? He hadn't been doing nothing. So now they're scrambling because he's about to get kicked out if he doesn't make E6. And I'm like, this. He's been, and he was a good soldier. He was just slugging along.
He didn't have the proper leadership pushing him.
He absolutely not. Yeah, absolutely not. I mean, he didn't have anybody looking at his stuff and saying, "Hey, like, what do you? Oh, well, I'm going to get out." He was me, right? I'm going to get out. So the leadership just kind of ignored him. I'm speculating, right? They ignored him. He's getting out. Whatever he'll do. He was an intel kid. He was going to get out and go do, go do something else. And so, but he didn't get out, and now he's panicking, right? Because he's about to get kicked out, right? Because he wasted all that time as opposed to just really like embracing and committing to the profession and doing all the things he needed to do to make him successful, whether he gets out or whether he doesn't get out, right?
Yeah, being in a unit like the 82nd with a high op tempo, and you have mostly good leadership. It's not true 100% of the time, but for the most part, I had amazing leadership. But once I got to Fort Bliss, where it's a leg unit, I just want to say it's a leg unit. Sure. So and I had NCOs that really didn't have any good leadership. So when I started doing my initial counseling for my NCOs, and then I did the quarterly counseling, and I'm like, your initial counselor's like, this is what I expect of you. This is what you've done so far. This is what I expect of you. And then when I did the first quarterly, I was like, hey, you don't have any civilian education. What's going on? Mm-hmm. You need to do some of this. Why, you've been E5 for 3-4 years now. What are you not doing? And I kind of counseled them, and I kind of helped them along. And then the 3 NCOs that I did have, I got them all 3 promoted. And so they were like, man, we've never had nobody do initial counseling. They never, did quarterly counselings with us. And then on top of the quarterly, I kind of did a face-to-face counseling once a month saying, hey, this is what you've done good. These are the notes I've taken. This is what you kind of need to work on. So, and it kind of really helped them progress in their career. Now, going back, I got a funny story about First Sergeant Bernie. So when I first got to the unit, I'm fresh out of airborne school. And I don't know if you remember, in airborne school, you couldn't say the word no because it sounds too much like go. Yeah. So you had to say not clear. So this is embedded in my head. And when I did my first, I would say intake with First Sergeant, and he was talking to me, I'm like, Roger, not clear for a second. He's like, well, what the hell are you not clear about? Right. So it was funny, but the type of leader First Sergeant Bernie was, and I'm really hammering on this because Delta Company had a really good leadership all throughout that I was there. Yeah. So we went to 2001. We went to NTC in October, and I came back, and my aunt calls me. She says, "Hey, your mother passed away." So I'm like, "Oh crap!" So I called Sergeant Portis was my squad leader, and then Sergeant Portis told First Sergeant Bernie, and I remember he's like, Sergeant Portis like, "Okay, go to your room, get your stuff together. We're going to get you on emergency leave." And then he called me and said, "Hey, First Sergeant wants to see you." So I came back up, and First Sergeant pulls me in his office. He's like, he pulls his drawer open, and he pulls out this big wad of cash. He had took up a collection from the company, and I'm just like taken back. I'm like, wow, I really appreciate that. Yeah. And it goes to show that, good leadership, taking care of your soldiers is the way to go. And I kind of adopted that all through my military career, and it definitely worked. So, so you're almost at the end of your, military career. What do you see in the future after you get out?
Yeah, so we got the business going, right? The stained glass company, right? OGC Stained Glass. So we're growing that, right? We're trying to take our time, right? We don't want to grow too fast, right?
Yeah.
Because there's really no need. So I think continuing to do that, and it's amazing, right? Because it's something that my wife and I that my wife Nicole and I can do together, right? So it definitely it's nice to be able to do that together and to be together doing that, as opposed to to just like the previous however many years, just kind of like, hey, she's got the kids, she's raising the boys, and I'm over here playing Army, right? So I think continuing, kind of seeing where that goes, and then really just spending time like with the boys, with the family. It's kind of weird, right? Because the whole reason that I decided to retire to begin with, right, was because they're at that age where like I feel like I need to be home, not necessarily off doing whatever, right? And I like to think if I would have continued on, I mean, there's opportunities out there, right? I could have continued to serve at like the GO level, a nominative CSM position, right? I mean, those opportunities are there. At least I like to think they are. So I could have done that, right? But then like watching leaders at that level, I mean, they're constantly gone, right? They're just they're like their op tempo is ridiculous, right? So I had to make a decision and say, okay, am I going to do that just to say that I'm a division level equivalent CSM, and then be away from my kids for 2 years, and then potentially retire on the backside anyway. So I had to really struggle with what is the return on investment, right? So I had to make I made the decision that I wanted to be home, and I wanted to be with the family, and so obviously that decision then drives future decisions, because now if I'm getting out of the Army to spend time with my family and to be able to to be with my wife and to raise my kids, then am I going to go turn around and get another 9-to-5 job that really just takes me away from my family and keeps me away? Maybe not traveling as much, but still. And so I'm at this kind of fork in the road where I'm like, hey, do I go do some kind of defense contract job, a GS job, whatever it is, right? That makes really good money, or I mean, there's a lot of opportunities out there that pay really well, but does that really meet the intent, right? Does that meet the intent of why, I've decided to, to retire in the first place, right? So I'm still trying to kind of figure that out, right? Perfect world, we focus on the business, we grow that. That's all we do, right? We're running that out of the house, right? So have a lot of flexibility. And then really just just be there, just spend time with the family and be there with the family, right? Maybe I'll pick up a little side hustle, maybe do some part-time stuff or whatever, just to if needed, right? But right now, like professionally, like I'm not looking at immediately jumping into another commitment, whether a different career or a different job, right? Because the thing about me, I mean, a lot of us are like that. When you're committed, like you're committed, right? Like you're all in. Right, and so I'm not really trying to be all in on anything right now except for the family, right, and then kind of grow this business. You know what I mean?
And if you think about it, and this is just my opinion, let's say you did decide to stay in and do this higher level CSM. I mean, what is that really going to do? You're at the pinnacle of, as far as enlisted goes. What's that going to do? Add a couple more years for your retirement? That's about it. But what do you lose on the back end? So that went into your decision maker process, yeah.
Yeah, not so much. Yeah, so it was by no means a financial decision, right? Because now you're counting like percentage points, right? How many more percentage you're getting. It was absolutely not a financial decision. The struggle really is like, I mean, when you've been serving for as long as we have, as long as a lot of us have, that call to service and that desire to serve is really what pulls you in that direction, right? So I think like it's almost like you feel like you're quitting, right? It's like, all right, I'm at like you're quitting the team when the team needs you, right? Because with all of just the craziness, I mean, you watch the news, right? The world's on fire, right? There's like stuff popping off all over the world, right? You got near peer threats, you got all this, you got stuff happening in Ukraine, and potential like real conflict in the future, right? So you definitely feel like you're quitting on the teams. That's a struggle, right? That's an internal struggle where it's not so much like self gratification. Oh, look at me, I'm the CSM of like whatever, right? It's not so much that. It's about and the army needs good leaders, right?
100%.
It at echelon, and so it's absolutely a struggle to make a decision to say, hey, we've been doing this, for so many years, right? Trying to quote unquote, balance or manage that imbalance, And then making that decision that, hey, look, like I'm good. Like I need to, my priorities have changed. I need to shift focus. And again, there's a little bit of I guess you can call it maybe paranoia, or there's a little bit of background there too, because like I said, I didn't have a good relationship with my dad, right? So through high school and then through like those years as I was like really growing up to be a man, like I didn't really have that father figure. I didn't really have that relationship with him. And so there's a part of me that's like, nah, like I can't do that to my boys, right? Like I definitely want to be there and focus my attention on that, right? So it's a struggle, man. I struggle with it every single day, right? Every day it's like, man, it would have been cool if, right? But then, to your point, right? What's the return? Like, what do you? It's all about risk, right? It's about like, hey, like what am I risking by making one choice or one decision or the other, right? So you start looking at things in terms of risk and in terms of priorities. It makes it a little easier, but it's definitely a struggle.
So I've always been curious, and it's not the same across the board. So some of these CSMs getting out, or lieutenant colonels, full birds that are getting out, and some fall right into a GS job at a high level. Some have contractors at a high level, but some, do you think it would be hard? They're used to being at a certain level, and then they get out, and let's say they want to continue work, and they got to start kind of like at the bottom again. Do you think people would struggle with that? I'm
sure some do. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, there's I think it's a mixed bag, right? I mean, I've seen retired CSMs that retired and then rolled into different positions, and they did it just fine, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they're personally and professionally mature enough to know that, hey, that's not my role anymore. Obviously they still chime in and be like, you're about to screw something up, or whatever. But at the end of the day, like they're a civilian. It is what it is, right? And I'm sure that on the flip side, you have some that absolutely don't like being told what to do. And that's it. Just all comes down to individual character, right? I mean, the ones I've seen, we generally don't do that.
Yeah. Okay. Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
But then you've got some that do. You run across them all the time, right? Down at Fort Liberty, right at the Soldier Sports Center, right? They're talking to you like not even a CSM, like they're talking to you like they're still a first sergeant, and it's like okay, look, man, I'm just trying to update my ID card, man. Yeah. Like we don't need to do this right now.
Yeah. I got you. So, can you share some particularly memorable or humorous story from your time in the Army?
Man, I got a lot of those. I got
anyone that like sticks out in your head?
So, I think humorous, right? I mean, we can take it back to like the Delta Company days, right? Because I've deployed or traveled all over the world. I've seen some. And if you've been to Iraq or Afghanistan, you've seen some wild stuff, right? Absolutely. And I've been to Africa plenty of times. There's some crazy stuff I've seen in Africa. I think probably like the story that that I find myself telling a lot was when they try to. I almost had to pay like $90,000 for a trailer, right? And so we were all in Delta Company, right? We were deployed to Iraq, and we were doing convoy escort. We were doing convoy security, right? So we had our gun trucks, and we would pick up a convoy from like the reserves or the National Guard or some other transportation unit, and we take them from Ramadi to Baghdad or whatever. Yeah. So we were doing one of those, right? And we're we had hit the Cloverleaf, and we're pulling into BIOP, right, into the Baghdad International Airport. And so I had a rule, right? It was just a crazy rule of mine that whenever we were doing any of those missions, if I had the PL with me or not, right? PL was usually up front, right? He was kind of doing his thing. And I had a rule as the platoon sergeant. I was like transitioning at that time from like being a squad leader to being, one of the platoon sergeants. And I had a rule that like, hey, I'm going to be the last vehicle. Right. That way, it doesn't matter what happens. Right. Vehicle breakdown, something gets disabled. Like I got accountability. I can be there for my guys. Right. And I know without a doubt that everybody's accounted for when we're not sitting there like counting trucks once we pull into the gate. Right. It's like that was just the thing of mine. Right. And so I was the last vehicle. Right. In the gun truck, and there was a tractor trailer in front of us, and we're coming around. We're like about a click away from pulling into the airport, and the brakes lock up on this trailer.
Oh, crap.
And it starts smoking, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
there's
yeah.
just like black smoke. It's just billowing out of this trailer, and this kid's just dragging this trailer down the road, right? Obviously not very fast, right? So the convoy leaves us, right? Like the forward security element, they got the rest of the convoy into the gate, and I'm stuck back here with this burning.
Jesus.
So we pull over, and once we pulled over, and the trailer wasn't moving anymore, like the whole thing catches on fire, right? Tires are on fire, right? Remember, like the beds on those on the trailers were wood.
Wait, this was like one of the local trucks.
No, it was a military, tractor trailer.
Oh,
yeah,
my God.
from a different. I think it was a different unit. I think it was like
Okay.
we were escorting like a different transportation unit. So the whole thing catches on fire, right? And I'm like, all right, this thing's burning to the ground. The fire's starting to spread. So I get out and like without, it wasn't like SOP or anything. It was just like instinctual. I go in, I pop the fifth wheel, disconnect the airlines, and I tell the kid, hey, go, right? So he guns it. Obviously, the wheels are locked up, so he goes. The trailer disconnects. It hits the ground.
Oh, man.
He takes off. I get in my truck. We go in and we get into the gate. Right, everything's all good. Right, there's this burning trailer on the side of the highway, and so that unit comes back and like, hey, we need to go recover the trailer, and we could see it burning right from where we're at. So like, all right, cool. They got a wrecker. We put together hasty little. Got two little trucks. Put it together. Hey, we're gonna go back out the gate. We're gonna go recover this trailer. And we weren't even, from the time we left that trailer to the time we got back, it was maybe half an hour. We got back, the trailer was gone.
No.
Yeah, the Iraqis took it.
Jesus.
Right? I think they took it on fire, right? For like scrap metal or whatever, right? So they did their, that company, again, it was a different unit. They did their little 15-6, their little flipple, right, to figure out who was financially liable. And of course, they're interviewing everybody, and then the driver's his truck. They're like, oh, this staff sergeant here told me to leave the trailer. He gave me a direct order, like, go. And I'm like, yeah, it was on fire. Like, now we got the trailer on fire. What? I'm going to tell you to get out of the cab.
Yeah.
So we let the cab burn. So they did their little investigation, and they found me liable for giving the order to just leave this trailer that was on fire on the side of the road, that I didn't know that the Iraqis were going to steal it. And they stole it quick, too. I mean, it was gone. So they forwarded that investigation over to 82nd. Luckily, we had some common sense leadership in 82nd that was like, hey, look, like considering the tactical situation on the ground, like what am I supposed to do? Pull security on a burning trailer with like one gun truck?
Now, was this, because I know you got MSR Tampa, and then going into BIOP, you make that left, and there's that side road going, and we had that big old mansion, Saddam's mansion up on the hill. You would pass by that. Was that on that back road?
It was on the main highway.
The main highway?
You come off of, I think it was Highway 11 coming from like Fallujah.
Yeah.
And then you cross the Cloverleaf, and then it was like that main highway that skirted the airport. So we had just made that turn.
Okay. Yeah.
It was like right on the overpass.
Mm-hmm.
And then the gate, like I said, was like a click. It was like a click down the road, right?
Yeah, man.
So I was like, man, like I could sit here and we could pull security on a burning trailer, the only ones out in the middle. And this was like 2004, I think, right? So it was still, I mean, it was hot, right? It wasn't like, you could just sit out there. So
No.
So they were like, hey, this guy's financially liable. He's got to pay like $90,000 for this trailer. And they were like, man, stop, right? But it was because I got a copy of the investigation. And I'm like looking at it, and I was like, oh man, they're serious. Like they're blaming me for this burning trailer that got stolen. I didn't have to pay for it at the end of the day. It was just funny, like dealing with that, and like and the fact that they wanted me to, like, somebody thought that I was gonna pay for a burning trailer that was stolen.
That's
right?
crazy, man.
It's just wild.
Yeah.
Right. And I was stressed too. I was like, man, I don't have $90,000. I'm an E6, right?
Yeah. So, talking about your stained glass company. So I know we touched on it, but what do you like most about doing stained glass? How'd you get into it?
So growing up in LA, I had a cousin who was into it, right? And I remember his mom's house. Like every window in that house was stained glass, right? And I just remember, like, I'm like, oh man, that's pretty cool, right? And I've always been artistic. I've always loved graphic design, right? I used to just sit there and like do graffiti on just always drawing, like going hitting trains down at the rail yard, right? I was always doing something like that, right? I was always just very. I'm not saying anybody go out and do graffiti, like it's all good, right? But it's just, it's just something that I always enjoyed, like that aspect of it. And so I've always been very artistic, like really like Nicole, she's like the artist, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Like you go to our website, and you see our catalog, like all those pieces that are on there, like that's all her, right? Because I was still the brigade CSM, and I was trying to like build the business, do the business management side of it, start the business, figure out how all this stuff works, like develop the business plan, kind of focus on what's our marketing strategy and all that stuff. I didn't have time to put my hands on glass, right? So she went from not really working with glass at all to like just within several months. I mean, she's making like her like the quality and the craftsmanship of like the work that she's doing. I mean, it's like world class. I mean, when you can see the pictures, but when you hold these pieces and you look at them, I mean, it's fantastic, man. She's a beast, right? And so I think the next step for us is we're the boys have been out of school because it's summer, and so I've been spending time with them, giving her time to kind of do her thing, or I do the stained glass or do whatever, because she's been essentially raising them for the last 6 years. So I think the part that I enjoy the most is us working on it together.
Absolutely.
Right? And so initially I was doing a lot of like the graphic design, like the black and white, like the schematic, for lack of a better term, of the pieces, and then handing them over to her, and then she's like cutting glass. She's doing all of like the actual like the hard work. And so as we kind of progress through, as I transition out of the Army, and that starts becoming our primary focus, like working on that stuff together, like sitting down behind a computer and coming up with a design, and then saying, hey, we need to put a line here because I can't cut the glass in that shape because it's too crazy, right? And actually sitting down and working on it together, as husband and wife, right? And having that kind of like it's just a very bonding thing, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's what I enjoy the most about it is just and then knowing that she enjoys it. She's 10 times the artist that I am, and she's just fantastic, right? So being able to do it together, and then at the same time, like being able to still remain connected to the community, because we're going to branch out. We're going to do some other pieces that are not necessarily tied towards the military or to the soft side, right? We'll start doing windows, right? I'm working on a lamp right now, like a desk lamp.
Oh, cool.
Which I want to do that. Once the boys are back in school. But I think it still ties us to the community, because a lot of the projects, I mean, you can see on the website, right? I mean, I did a piece for a buddy of mine that's a third group guy, right? She did that piece. It was completely her design. It's fantastic, right? And we're working a couple pieces now that are specifically like, guys that are like retired operators that I don't even know, but through the network, they were like, oh man, you do good work. I'm sure they vetted me. They're like, hey, do you know this Bogdan guy? Oh, yeah. And then they hit me up on like LinkedIn or whatever, like, hey, can you do this piece for us? And so I think being able to still be tied some way to the community, grow the business, and I think most importantly is just doing it together. Has just been so far has just been so rewarding. Whether the business takes off or not, right? It's all good. Right?
So you're doing it primarily out of your garage, right?
Yeah. Our shop's in the garage.
Yeah.
Yep.
Do you see yourself going into like a brick and mortar?
So right now, what we've told ourselves is that if it gets to the point where it becomes too stressful to manage the workload, or we find ourselves like having to like now pay money to set up like a shop or whatever, we'd have to probably take a step back and be like, hey, is this really what we want? Right? Because it's just the two of us, so we can do it out of the garage, right? If we're going to expand and we're going to go into like a bigger facility, the only reason we would do that is because we just need more room to work. And if we need more room to work, that means we got more work. And if we got more work, that means we got to hire people. And I don't know if that's our goal, if we're at that point yet, right? As long as we can manage it with just the two of us, I think we'll be straight.
And y'all are bringing the boys into it? They're kind of learning too?
Yeah, I mean they're there, right? We try to be like, hey, don't touch that. That's glass. It's sharp or whatever. But they're definitely curious, And so they're Alex is very artistic. If he picks it up, he picks it up, right? I mean, he's still at the age where he's not going to be cutting glass anytime soon. If he asked, I'm sure we'd be like, yeah, sure, look, cut that glass, go ahead, right? If it's something that they jump in on, that's definitely cool, right? If not, then they can keep doing Spartan races and doing that ninja stuff, at least for the next couple of years.
It sounds like they're good at it too.
They're good. Yeah, Alex is a beast.
Yeah,
he's crazy. I mean, he can climb the cargo net better than I can. Yeah, that's no joke. I'm afraid of heights.
That's crazy. You're afraid of heights.
It's crazy. Don't ask me to do obstacles. I'll hang out of an airplane all day long, right? But you ask me to climb an obstacle that's too high, it's just like, man, the world starts spinning.
Yeah.
Crazy.
So, if you could have dinner with any historical figure, military or otherwise, who would it be and why?
Yeah, that's tough. So I think, I mean, my immediate answer would be just because we're starting a business. I mean, I would love to sit down with somebody like Elon Musk and not talk about Tesla or rocket ships or whatever. Like that's great. Like that stuff's cool. But to talk about like when he first started this stuff, right? When he first had a vision for what he wanted to achieve, he took a lot of risk.
Oh yeah.
Right. And so understanding how that risk is managed and how you get after that, I think is something that is super interesting to me, because I'm in a position where like if our stained glass company makes it or if it doesn't, if it feel like I'm not relying on the stained glass company to put food on the table, keep the lights on, right? Right, because I just have the luxury, right? Being retiring from the military after 26 years, I'm not really worried about it. But so therefore, I can assume a lot more risk with certain things that we're doing than I would be able to if like I was like paying the bills with this company, right? And so I constantly think about risk, right? And it's the same thing, like commanders at higher levels. Once you get to the 06 and above level, like they think in terms of risk, right? So I would love to sit down with somebody like that to just really talk about that. Like, hey man, like you went all in. Like you dropped out of college to start, Apple or Microsoft or whatever. That's a lot of risk, right? But I think like that's all cool, right? I think if I had one person that I could sit down and just have dinner with and just talk to and ask questions, I would have to be my mom, right? I mean, she passed away.
Okay.
She passed away in 2016.
Yeah.
So it's been a while, right? Before we had kids, before we had a whatever, and I think she was living in LA. We ended up moving her with us to North Carolina, when she got cancer. And so we were kind of like working through that. But there's just a lot of things now, like looking back over the last, I mean, we're coming up on 8 years, soon to be 9 years since she passed away. And I've got 2 kids now. I think really being able to sit down and just kind of like reflect on her decisions, right? Deciding to leave, her country, start over from scratch, and then just I would have a lot of questions for her now that I didn't really get the opportunity to ask at the time, right? So I think if I had to pick one person, it would 100% be her, right?
Awesome, man. With your background of military history and strategic like planning and stuff, how do you see the future of the military evolving?
So, the Army, not just the Army, like the military as a whole, like, we're coming out of this, we're transitioning from like this, like the GWAT era, right? Where it was very like low intensity, counterinsurgency kind of stuff, right? It was combat, but it wasn't war, right?
Yeah.
And so actually, there's an interesting question because I was actually watching a podcast just the other day where SMA Weimer was talking about the exact same thing, right? He was kind of like comparing like, hey, like yeah, combat is combat, and we've all not taking anything away from like the GWAT guys, and because we've all been slugging it out for so many years. But I think when we start looking in terms of like large scale combat operations, you're talking about like World War III, like ship on ship, tank on tank, like plane on plane, like full scale war. That's not something that we've seen for a really long time, right?
Yeah.
Even Desert Storm, you could say was the last time that it was like really like force on force, combat, but that was in large scale. It was over so fast. I mean, maybe you were part of it. It was large scale, right? But it was just over so fast. So I think, I don't think it's really about the military evolving, but I think it's about the DoD, especially the Army, kind of going back to its roots, right? To what it was designed to do, which is like land, like large scale, like land, combat, land warfare, right? And so 20 years of GWAT, we've gotten very comfortable where you can sit on your fob, right? You got, the T-Rats and the Rippets are being delivered, by helicopter. And then, and so that's not what the next conflict is going to be like, right? It's not going to be like that at all. I mean, it's going to be like full scale. It's going to be like full mobilization. It's going to be the the entirety of the nation is going to get behind it, like we saw, back with World War II. So I think, training, modernizing, innovating to be able to win in that kind of a conflict. At the same time, dealing with some of the there's recruiting challenges. There's all these different things that are happening. I think that's where the military really finds itself is preparing for that kind of conflict, right? And then understanding that, hey, like tech is cool, right? But at some point, tech kind of I'm not saying it becomes irrelevant on the battlefield, but at some point, right, it's gonna require leadership.
Oh, absolutely.
Right. To lead through that kind of stuff, right? And so I think that's where that leadership development and specifically in the non-commissioned officer corps, right? I mean, if there's like the one thing that it's like China can have drones and they can have hypersonics and everybody can do all this stuff and AI and all that, but at the end of the day, like the one thing that really sets us apart, sets like the United States military apart from anybody else, is the fact that we've had this professionalized NCO corps for decades. Right, and you just can't replicate that. Like there's not enough time to create the institutions and to create the culture where you have that, right? And so I think like for me, understanding that's going to happen. How do we prepare ourselves? How do we prepare our soldiers? Make sure that they're trained, that they're ready, to face that kind of a conflict. But at the same time, understanding that, okay, leadership becomes even more important, right? So it's not high school basketball, it's not college basketball, it's not just NBA, it's like game 7 of the finals.
Yeah.
Right? And there's a lot more at stake than just, okay, you weren't the national champion or you didn't win the trophy. There's a lot more at stake. And so the way we train, the way we continue to practice, right, shooting those free throws when nobody else is shooting free throws is absolutely important, right? And I think the same applies to the leadership aspect of it, right? I think we got to definitely have like the right leaders because that's what's going to get us through ultimately, right? And then of course partnerships, alliances, and all that, right? Especially like on the soft side, like we rely heavily on building those partnerships, like working with those the partner nations and with our allies to really like build out that capability, build their capability, so when it goes down, it's not just us, right? We've got a team to get after it, right? And so that's what a lot of senior leaders, I think, are talking about and thinking about right now in the military.
Well, before, what kind of sets us apart with the GWAT era, and this is, I don't know, this is my opinion. Maybe it's true across the board, I don't know, but before we were fighting, you could identify it. They were in uniform. There was like force on force. Now, with the GWAT, we were just fighting regular plainclothes people. We didn't know if they were a part of the citizenship there or they were just people there against us.
Sure.
And the crazy thing is, and what they would do is, and this we get reports from our HUMIT teams and all that type of stuff. These guys are going in, getting these farmers and saying, hey, you're going to plant this IED here or we're going to kill you and your family. And they had no choice. Sure. So, and then they get caught up with all that propaganda and all that stuff. Because that's what happened to me when I got into, IED explosion. It was the person that owned the land.
Sure.
And, they caught the guy and they were asking him, well, hey, this is what happened. So going back to what you were saying, in this era, we rely on fundamentals like, okay, can you read a map?
Sure.
What if your GPS goes down? Can you navigate through this area? Can you terrain associate and all that type of stuff? So I think that's what makes the NCO Corps great because we go back to that fundamentals.
Yeah. No, it's interesting because they did away with land nav at BLC. Like
that's crazy.
They're bringing it back, right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. I think like, especially if we know that we're going to be in like a GPS, denied or degraded environment or comms denied, degraded environment, which is going to happen, right? So now you're just, and then you got drones, all over the place that can see your every single movement, right? I mean, you key the mic and you're getting blown off the map that quick, right? It absolutely comes back down to the basics, right? To those fundamentals, right? It's like, can you soldier and can you do all that stuff in that environment? And then do you have the right leadership that can kind of adapt as the situation adapts and make sure that they're leading the right way, right? So yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. Like it's like at the end of the day, like that's what once you remove all the tech and all the all the fancy stuff or whatever, at the end of the day, right, you got boots on the ground and you got soldiers that are the ones that are going to get after it, right?
So, man, we've had a really good conversation. You got anything in closing?
No, like I said, man, I appreciate the time. I know this is the first one that's live and in person, which is pretty awesome, right? I'm honored to be able to kind of to share this with you guys. I mean, the podcast, right? I wish you guys nothing but the best, man. And like I think what you guys are doing is really good, right? The outreach and just being like those advocates, and I think a resource for just for veterans, man. I'm looking forward to seeing like who else you come in that you guys bring in, right? I think it's good, right? Maybe in a year or so, man, you'll have me back out here after I'm officially retired, and we can get after it again, right?
Oh, 100%, man. Circle back and you tell us how transition went and how the business is going.
Yeah,
That'd
absolutely.
be good. Where can, if somebody wants to get some stained glass work from you, where can they go?
Yeah, so we're on, we're on Instagram, we're on Facebook, right? I think the easiest way really is if you just go to OGCStainedGlass.com, right? We have our website set up. You can see our gallery, right, of the stuff that we've done, and we're continuing to update that. At the bottom of that is all our social media stuff, right? So you got links to, Instagram, Facebook, my LinkedIn is on there. There's videos of our projects, right? Videos I've made that are on YouTube, so you can go to that. All those links are at the bottom. So yeah, OGCStainedGlass.com. You can shoot us an email from right there, and we'll get back to you. We'll work with you one-on-one. You tell us, right? You give us your vision. You tell us what you want for the project, and then we'll work with you, right? Basically from the beginning, we'll design it. We'll get after it, right? We're super excited. We're working a couple projects now that are gonna be pretty awesome, right? So stay tuned.
Also, I can't wait to see it. And everything the link will be down in the description for OGC Glass. So go there, give them a shout out, give them a follow, and go get something from them. But again, man, thanks for coming on. We appreciate it, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
All right, we'll see you on the next one. Peace.